Good morning, everybody. It is time for another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawk Blogger. And if you haven't gone over to Instagram recently, make sure you do. Find Hawk Blogger there. Click follow. We're closing in on 1,000 followers as we try to build up that channel. Bit of a difference between the 50,000 people on Twitter, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there. And today, one of my favorite days of the week, every Tuesday during the season, Mike Randle from FTN Fantasy comes in to talk to us about all that's going on with the playmakers in the NFL from a fantasy football perspective, from a football perspective, and from a betting perspective. And love it. Mike, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday?
Doing well, Brian. Thoroughly enjoyed my favorite fantasy week of the year. Week 2, the knee-jerk reaction week. We make grand conclusions from a small subset of data in week 1 and see how almost all of them are completely wrong because things regress both positive, negatively. So really enjoyed it. A lot of exciting stuff to talk about.
What's been your biggest surprise so far? Whether it's a team, whether it's a player, what's got your attention?
Oh, 100% it's the Saints. We had the Saints offensive line ranked the worst coming into the season. There were questions on defense, Derek Carr. The win against the Panthers, fine. It looks like the Panthers really are struggling, although they could get a boost from Andy Dalton starting this week because Bryce Young has been that bad. But I was shocked by the way they went in and just lit up a Cowboys defense, which look real strong, which has Micah Parsons, which has Mike Zimmer as the defensive coordinator. That is the surprise to me. Can they keep it going? That's what we have to find out.
How did the model do this week? It's probably gonna always be my first question. I know you guys were 7-2 last week. I'm curious. Good week 2, tough week 2.
No, decent week. The couple of the totals were wrong. So, for example, we had the under in the Saints Cowboys game. That was an anomaly. We did hit on the Tennessee Jet under. What's important, Brian, with the model is as the week goes on, of course, the lines change. So that opened at 42.5. We recommended it at 42. It was still a play of 41.5. By the time it kicked off on Sunday, it was 41. So even if you got it there, it was a push. The big success for us was, and we talked about this last week, the Monday Night Football game, where our biggest edge all week was the Falcons getting what was 6.5 for most of the week, ended up being 5.5 against the Eagles. It didn't feel great. The Falcons didn't look good. Kirk Cousins on prime time. And sure enough, because of a Saquon Barkley dropped, they ended up coming down and they got the win outright. So either way, it was a solid week. Not as good as week 1, but on to week 2. And again, wasn't a lot of edges. We won over those 10% edges, but Atlanta was the big one, which we had from start to finish.
Well, I think that's an important, note as well, is that, as someone who's not an active sports bettor, there's also the reality that not every week you're going to have games that are really advantageous to play. And so I think people that take it a little more seriously, they look where there's a big edge to be had, and they asymmetrically, put money on those games versus just every week kind of betting what the favorites are. So as you've taught us, look for where there's, I think it's an 8% edge or more is something to look at, but 10% or more is really where you guys recommend. Is that right?
Yeah, and the totals were off this week a little bit because what you want is a normal sort of progression. No one expected the Saints to come in and go 6 touchdowns in a row, whatever it was against the Cowboys. So the model is based on 10,000 simulations, and you assume reasonable things on both sides. You don't want the quarterback to get injured. You don't want to see 3 turnovers, etc. But if it stays within that reasonable sort of outcome prediction level, we're probably going to be on the target more often than not. So, yeah, we look for 8 to 10% edges. Anything over 5% is a play, but 8 to 10 is really a strong play. And anything over that is something we're really pushing forward.
Well, as I've said before, I was a subscriber for Football Outsiders when Aaron Schatz was there. And that wasn't really a betting thing. It was just stats for the most part. And when Aaron moved DVOA data to FTN and I started subscribing there, it's been kind of a cool addition that I get to look at these edges every single week. We'll talk about them more in a second. But for people that haven't already, make sure you head over to ftnfantasy.com. Use promo code HAWKS. You want to get the Fantasy Football Plus subscription or greater. It doesn't matter if you don't play fantasy football. And that would be one of my pitches to FTN is not to call other packages about fantasy football, because I think there's just amazing data there that I pay for not for fantasy football or even for betting, but you get all that information as well. So use promo code Hawks. It is less than $8 a month. It is a fantastic deal. And I've been bugging Mike all day about when week 2 data is going to start flowing in completely, because I go there. Actually, I'll show folks here. One of the things I was looking at is the Seahawks played against the Patriots this week. And by the way, guess who I saw when I was at Gillette Stadium? Who? Mr. Aaron Schatz.
Oh, yes. Aaron, was it right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Yep,
yeah,
exactly.
So, it was fun to see Aaron IRL. And Aaron's not bought into the Seahawks. He's like, they're a mediocre team. And I'm like, all right. I hear you, dude. We'll see. Your DVOA says differently for the time being, but we'll see. But here is a look. Let me make this a little bit bigger for folks. So here's a look at StatsHub behind the scenes. One of the things you get for getting the Fantasy Football Plus or greater. But one of the things I was bringing up is that if you look at, you can sort defenses by man or zone coverage. So right here, I'm going to zoom in and let me go ahead and pin. Oh, I think I already have this pinned to the left. Okay, fine. So if you go to these coverages, you've got Jacksonville, Denver, Carolina, Cincinnati. Anyway, long story short, you've got some of these defenses that do a lot of man coverage. Well, the Patriots here, I think something may be off. I might be in the wrong place, but the Patriots are known for doing a lot of man coverage. And so when I wanted to look to see this week with zone coverages, it turns out Miami is number 1 in the NFL in running zone coverages. Geno Smith excels against man coverage. He was able to dice up the Patriots man coverage this week. And so it's just something that I look at when I'm trying to do my preview for these teams, that I get access to this data because I have access to, FTN and all this content. So highly recommend it. It's not just an ad. It's something I believe in. So, all right, let's get into it with talking about Playmakers. That's the title of the show. Who are the Playmakers right now, Mike? Who jumped out to you?
Well, the start with the Saints offense, which was incredible. I mean, Derek Carr has been, Brian, the most efficient quarterback to start the season of anyone in the NFL, hitting Rashid Shaheed late. And of course, Alvin Kamara. He's catching the ball. He's running it in. Taysom Hill left this game with a chest injury. So really was Kamara at the goal line all day long. So the Saints have been incredible so far. Other playmakers staying with your team here. We talked about Christian Gonzalez and how well he did against Jamar Chase in that win over the Bengals. And then I thought of you right away while I'm watching it live on getting the highlights there in NFL Network. DK Metcalf exploding down the sideline, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Talk about somebody bouncing back from week 1, just all over the place. And we can just call him JSN since Mad Dog Russo over here in New York can't pronounce his name, but just a dominant performance, such a safety valve for Geno Smith over the middle of the field. Super impressive. And on the other side, there were injuries galore that hurt everyone across the board. But Rashee Rice, someone who was worried about getting suspended with the off-the-field issues, now with Hollywood Brown out, now with Isaiah Pacheco out, Brian, looks like Rashee Rice is every bit a top 10 fantasy wide receiver and maybe real life wide receiver in the NFL this year, because he's going to get peppered with targets from the best quarterback in the game. So just a couple people there around the league who were surprising, really impressed.
Yeah, I thought of you as well with the JSN breakout. And what did you and I talk about last week? I said, you were like, hey man, I thought you said Tyler Lockett was going to not get the targets, and DK and JSN were. And I mentioned it's really going to correlate to the pass protection.
That's it.
And I think that the JSN play in general for me is less reliant on that than DK, because I think they're going to look DK a little bit with a little bit deeper routes in most cases, although he was involved with a lot of quick passes in this game. And JSN, it was just a fantastic game to be able to see. This is the player and the utilization of this player that I think we all had in mind. He was all over the field, short, intermediate, left, middle, right, and he was the number one outlet for Geno in this game against a very good nickel corner. So I think that's a pretty positive one for the Seahawks. I have some questions about the Marvin Harrison Jr. I think obviously everyone assumes this guy's going to be great, but that Rams defense, man, like that is a poverty team right now with the injury situation.
And Brian, I'm always skeptical. And listen, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a great wide receiver in the league, but I'm always skeptical when the production comes on just a couple receptions. He basically got his entire day on 2 receptions in the first quarter. One was a great catch in the end zone. The other one was sort of a broken play where Kyler was scrambling around a little bit. So he's fine. He will be a fade for me this week, no doubt, because I'm sure they're going to set his receiving yardage prop line at like 75, something like that. Listen, nice player, but they blitz them from the start. The Rams defense is decimated, like you said. They have no offense, so quick drives, giving the ball back to Kyler Murray. I like Marvin Harrison Jr., but for a breakout, I'm skeptical of that. A player who I'm not skeptical of, who's been fantastic, is like a J.K. Dobbins for the Chargers, because we talked early this year about how the Chargers are going to run the ball. That's what Jim Harbaugh does. Frank Gore, 4 straight seasons, fantasy running back 1 production, 1,200 yards, 1,100 yards. The question was who it was going to be, and it seems to be J.K. Dobbins. So that one is sustainable because it's a system play. The one with Marvin Harrison, great athlete, going to have boomer bust weeks, but let's take it easy because it's not like he had a JSN game where he had like 12 receptions. He had a couple big plays, and that's what he's going to do. But Trey McBride is still there, Michael Wilson, James Conner, etc.
What's your take on what's going on in San Francisco? So speaking of different, plays and sits and stuff like that, Deebo Samuel injured in this last game against Minnesota in the closing moments of that game. I bet they didn't say what play it was, but there was a play where Purdy threw a pass on 3rd and 4 toward the goal line or something like that, and it was tipped, and Deebo caught it and was, I think, wrestled to the ground. Anyway, it was a bad choice by him to catch that ball. But Brandon Ayuk hasn't looked like Brandon Ayuk yet. And the offensive line for the 49ers has struggled a bit. How do you think that that's going to affect the plays here? Obviously, George Kittle might be more of a play than he was. What do you think that's going to happen with the 49ers?
Well, I would be careful with the 49ers conclusion because remember, they played what we thought was a good Jets team in week 1 and absolutely destroyed them, ran the ball down their throat and really stifled their running game. So what happened in week 2? They went on the road, number 1, which is always tough in the NFL, and they played probably one of the best defenses in the league under Brian Flores, and that's the Minnesota Vikings defense. Even still, without McCaffrey, Deebo injured now, they still were able to keep this game close. I bet the rumors we're hearing here at FTN is that Christian McCaffrey possibly will not return until like week 10 because they are worried here about having a torn Achilles because it's Achilles tendonitis, which can lead to something even more serious. So the Deebo one worries me a little bit more. They have a bye in week 9. So I think the target date for McCaffrey, this is just me speculating, would be week 10 at Tampa Bay. George Kittle is going to be an issue. Jacob Cowling, the rookie, is probably going to get to see some time, and Jawan Jennings. I think the Niners are okay. Their defense is still going to be solid. They gave up a bomb to Justin Jefferson. Outside of that, on the road, they hold the Vikings to a pretty reasonable number, and they played a really good defense on the road in a close game. So Deebo is the player that they create opportunities for on offense. That was sort of Ayuk's frustration, is he felt he had put up the numbers, even though he doesn't get schemed as much as Deebo does. But he's now going to have his chance to prove it because they're going to need him. So I think they can exist without McCaffrey. Jordan Mason's been fantastic. I think he's number 2 in the league in rushing. But I think we should caution about worrying too much about the Niners, only because after week 1, the reaction was we buried the Jets. Week 2, the Vikings may be pretty good here. And at home, they're going to be tough, and they have a good defense. So I don't think it's as big a deal as if they lose this week to the Rams, Brian. Then I'd be a little more skeptical.
That's a little hard to imagine,
Yeah.
even without Debo. That would be something. I would certainly enjoy watching that happen, but I would not predict it. All right. So speaking of defenses, what are the defenses when you're looking from a fantasy perspective? And this, to me, we talk fantasy football, but it all translates into football in general. What are the defenses that you would avoid if you got a guy going up against these guys? You'd at least look at whether or not to sit the player because they're going to be a tough defense to go against. Did we lose you, Mike? Seems to happen.
There we go.
Are you back?
I'm back. Yep.
You're a little bit, your picture's not back. All right, Mike, why don't you go ahead and try to jump off and jump back in, and we'll get you back going. I don't know if I completely see things the same way that Mike does when you're talking about the 49ers. I agree with the Rams game. I mean, it won't matter. They could have their entire team pretty much gone, and I still think that they'd win that game. But I think Deebo Samuel's played a pretty large role for them, and I think Brandon Ayuk needs to start stepping up if they're going to maintain that level of play. All right, we've got you back, Mike. So defenses to avoid.
Yeah, defenses to avoid. I go to our DVOA page, Brian, and I look right at the top defenses across the board. You have the Chargers #1 per defensive DVOA here at FTN. You have Minnesota #2. You have New Orleans #3, Houston #4. So those are defenses that I don't want to face. The other one that's sort of up and coming is Cleveland. Cleveland was not good in week 1. They look pretty good this week. Now they have the Giants this week, so that's going to be a little questionable if you have to play Malik Neighbors, something like that. And the fourth one, the one that impressed me was the Bears, because the Bears have always been good. Matt Eberflus can coach defense. There's no question about that. You want to say something about him as a head coach? That's fine. But the defense looked good. They go on the road Sunday Night Football against an elite offense in Houston, and they played well. Legit home.
Hey, Mike, we're losing you again. Yeah, that New Jersey internet, man. It's a lot of people packed into a small space, and they're all trying to get on the internet. So we'll see if we can get Mike back on here in a second and get the rest of his take on the defenses. I think he was talking about the Texans game against the Bears, and the Bears defense did look good. I got to say, I don't know why they have to have Bengals uniforms. Like, why do the Bears have to have an alternate that looks pretty much like the same color as the Bengals? I realize that they've got that kind of orangish, reddish in their C for Chicago, but man, it just looked like I was watching the Bengals play on that Sunday night game. I do think the Bears defense is good. I have questions about whether that offense is going to be able to survive. There is a lot of Shane Waldron conversation going on right now, and there's a lot of Bears fans that are concerned about how Shane Waldron is going to look with Mr. Caleb Williams, who, by the way, also I had concerns about going in, and people told me I was crazy, but this is a guy that has been really, really effective at playing off script and out of the pocket. And I had some questions about how he was going to play within the structure of an NFL offense. And so far, he does not look like he's ready to do that. All right, Mike, you look back.
I'm being sabotaged, Brian.
We're going to have to get
you
you
that.
Being
sabotaged. This is crazy.
We're going to have to get you that upgraded internet. You know, ask FTN. Tell him the star needs his internet. So, what about the other side, Mike? What about defenses where you're like, okay, if you got guys going up against here, you might want to make sure that they come off your bench to play because they're going to probably have a big day.
Yeah, starting against teams that you want to look to start against, Carolina does not look good. Although, let's see, with Andy Dalton now, they're going to go out to play the Raiders this week. Could Andy Dalton give a little more symmetry to the offense, which would allow the defense to rest and maybe keep the games closer? But per DVOA here, Aaron Schatz, Washington, the worst defensive team per DVOA in the NFL. Philadelphia, the second worst. The Eagles last night, I mean, Brian, the end of the game, they just let Kirk Cousins go right down the field. No pressure. Darius Slay gets beat by Drake London, who is not high in our separation metrics. He is not a Tank Dell-like receiver who can get open like that right at the end at the goal line. Indianapolis also doesn't look good. Malik Willis was able to guide the Packers to a win there as well. And the Rams, of course, we mentioned because of the injuries. But I will point out that the 5th worst defense per DVOA coming to Seattle this week, the Miami Dolphins. So that's certainly exciting as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to bring up. Dolphins defense is 28th in the NFL in DVOA. They are 30th against the pass and 23rd against the run. And everyone's talking about Tua being injured, right? And yes, that's a big deal. It's a huge deal. Teron Armstead being injured, big deals. They were there for almost that whole game against the Bills, and they also don't play defense. Mm-hmm. And so the Dolphins have, I think, been one of the most disappointing teams in the NFL through 2 weeks, setting aside the injuries. That said, I would not overlook this team coming in. Any team that has the playmakers that they do, in that they're backed into a corner, I think is going to be a tough team to beat. But yeah, was interested in hearing your thoughts there. Let's actually talk about, since we're on that game, let's talk about what the model shows here. I haven't looked at this yet, so let's look at this together. We're going to look at this together. Pull this up. And again, promo code HAWKS gets you 15% off to all of this. I'm giving you an inside look. Here is the Miami Dolphins versus the Seahawks. It is projected that Seahawks will have 24 points and the Dolphins 23. It is like a half a point difference. The spread is 5.5 here. It's actually got an 8.5% edge for the Dolphins on that spread, which I think, according to you, is playable, right? Mm-hmm. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, it's playable, and I will tell you that our model predicted a 22-21 final score with Atlanta and Philadelphia last night. That was our projected score, so we hit it right on the head. Yeah, and what this is, Brian, is this is a spot to bet on the Dolphins. Seahawks riding high, 2-0. Dolphins 1-1, probably should be 0-2, coming off a pitiful performance, but extra rest. You don't know exactly what Mike McDaniel's going to do because you don't have a lot of tape to study here with Skylar Thompson. They still have elite weapons in A-Chain and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So it's really a spot is what it is. It's nothing against Seattle, but Miami is going to be undervalued by the market because of recency bias. And the Seahawks being 2-0 and returning home are going to be overrated by the betting market. Who would I bet on to win the game? Seattle. Would I lay 5.5? I don't know if I would do that, to be honest.
Yeah. The Seahawks have only, they essentially they pushed the first week with the Broncos. They had a 6-point favorites. They pushed then. They won by 3 points in overtime against the Patriots. They have not shown that they can separate from a team, even some teams that have questionable talent. So the other thing that's interesting here is for the over-under, there's a 13% edge for the over. Now, this is next to the Dolphins? Does that mean you bet the Dolphins over? But I thought over-under, you're just betting the total combined score, yes?
No correlation to the Dolphins. It's just an over bet. It just happens to go on the top, and we put the unders on the bottom. But that makes sense because the Dolphins' defense does not look good. So you expect Seattle to put up points, and look at the Dolphins weapon. Probably could put up some points. That's why the over is such a strong in theory.
I'm sorry to say, Mike, we are getting bad internet once again. So maybe we'll try to get you back on here one more time and see if we can get things working. But as Mike kind of works through that, let me look at a couple other things here. We've got the 49ers and the Rams game. 49ers are 7.5 point favorites. And as of now, no edge to that. So 0% edge essentially there. they've got it. Basically, the projected points is 30-22 is the projected score. And then for the over-under, this is an interesting one. For the over, it's 43.5, and they've got a 16% edge that it's going to go over that 43.5. So they're expecting the Niners to put up a lot of points, and maybe they're also expecting the Rams to do the same. So we will see on that. And then the other game for the NFC West, Detroit Lions, Arizona Cardinals. This is an interesting game. It's at Arizona. The Lions will face the Cardinals, and then next week after, the Seahawks will travel to Detroit for a Monday Night Football game. The Lions dropped this game, the game this week, to the Bucs, so they're 1-1. They're going to be motivated. They are currently 3-point favorites in Arizona, and basically no edge there. So the expectation is that the Lions will win this game. It's 27-25 is what the projected point total is here. I think the Cardinals defense is really a question mark, and I think everyone's going to overvalue them by because of facing that Rams team that's just in total disarray. But there's still real challenges on that defense, and I think the Lions are going to be able to really move the ball against them. So there's a question here. Can you explain what edge means? Edge means basically, how confident they are in this outcome being, what happens. So if there's an 8% or above or a 10% or above edge, then there's enough of a belief, enough confidence. Think of it as a confidence score, how much that's going to happen. And so, essentially it's going to correlate to the probability, right? And in this case, they're giving less than a 50% chance that the Lions will cover that 3-point spread. So there's not an edge. For the 49ers, they've got a 68% probability that they think it's going to go over the 43.5. That's a 16% edge. So that's what, they're talking about with edge in this case. So, I look at these different games. I mean, I think the week 2 games, there was a lot of just like, I don't know, that they seemed pretty boring. And I don't think that I was particularly interested, but they ended up being pretty fascinating games. Week 3, I think things turn up quite a bit. The Texans face the Vikings. The Chargers Steelers is going to be an interesting game. These are games you wouldn't have picked to begin the year that they are interesting, but they certainly seem interesting now. The Eagles Saints is interesting. The Packers Titans is interesting. So there's just a number of these games, even the Bears Colts. I could kind of keep going. I personally think the Patriots Jets game is one I have an eye on. I still don't trust the Jets. I really didn't respect what I saw in that first week. I don't think what they did last week was all that impressive either. They are currently favored by 6.5 points over the Patriots at home. I'm not a betting person, and I'm not telling you to, but I would take the Patriots in that, and I'd take those points for sure. I don't think a lot of teams are going to beat the Patriots by more than a touchdown. So, all right, Mike, we got you back. We'll see how long we can keep you. Talk to us about these matchups versus the Dolphins. Are there players or plays that you think are interesting in this game, either for the Seahawks or for the Dolphins?
Yeah, the Dolphins have struggled against the run. You saw what happened with James Cook, where he was killing both of them right up the middle, 3 touchdowns. So you tell me the update with Kenneth Walker. I'm kind of hoping Ken Walker plays because I think it's a fantastic matchup for him. Charbonnet seemed strong, especially in the receiving game, which we know is sort of his wheelhouse. But I think you can definitely take advantage. And similar to the Denver game, Brian, you just don't want turnovers. I think you'll be able to move the ball on them, grind it out. They're going to have to respect DK and now JSN with all that he's done as well. So the rushing game is a huge advantage for you right now, especially what you saw with James Cook, 3 touchdowns. So if you can deploy Walker and he's healthy and ready to go, you will have an advantage here against them.
Awesome. All right, let's get into some questions submitted by our Listeners, and before I do, I want to make sure, great comment here from Detail Oriented. He's not a fantasy football guy, but he is loving the membership to FTN. Very worth getting. Lets the geek in me look up so much information. And again, promo code Hawks gets you 15% off, less than $8 a month for Fantasy Football Plus. You want to make sure you get the Fantasy Football Plus or greater sub, because that's what comes with Stats Hub and DVOA and all that good stuff. So, all right. First question comes from Braxton. Says, Tank Dell has been pretty disappointing through 2 weeks. Do I sell low on him with a loaded wide receiver room, JSN and Brian Thomas Jr. on my bench?
See, I can't sell Tank Dell, Brian. He has run 66 routes on 77 CJ Stroud dropbacks. So he's on the field all the time. He has a 16% target share, which isn't terrible. His ADOT is 14.4, which is solid. That's 16th among 84 qualifying wide receivers here at FTN. And remember, we're so frail in how we view this. Tank Dell had a wide open touchdown, which he could have caught in week 1 and taken to the house. Had he done that, no one would be saying anything about Tank Dell. He slipped right down the middle. So I'm staying with him. Listen, would I start Jackson Smith and Jacob over him this week? 100%. But I don't think you can sell Tank Dell. I think that's a mistake. I would look to acquire Tank Dell. His 6% route participation is barely behind his 6%. He's slightly behind Nico Collins. Nico Collins had a great matchup against the Bears, who play man defense. He's number 1 in yards per route run over the last 2 years here at FTN for wide receivers, right with Tyreek Hill. So I'm holding on Tank Dell.
All right. Next 2 questions come from Brendan. First one, who takes the RB1 reins in Kansas City with Isaiah Pacheco down, and are they even worth a flyer?
The flyer is Samaje Perine, because we've seen I'm Missouri, the show me state. I've seen the passing down running back in Kansas City do well. Jerick McKinnon, 2 years in a row. So Samaje Perine is the choice to me. I think the Chiefs are going to be in some close games. They're going to be passing a lot. Carson Steele has been fine. He was great in the preseason, the rookie, but he's fumbled a couple times, which Andy Reid's not going to deal with. So there's rumors of them bringing in Kareem Hunt as well, possibly. So I don't even want to mess with that. I'll just go with Perine. I think he's the safe bet. We've seen that role be great before. And without Hollywood Brown, they need another receiver here to move this team forward. Xavier Worthy, side of a milk carton this week. So I think Perine is the play over Carson Steele, even though he will not get the goal line work.
All right. And then another one from Brendan here. How do I console my 10-year-old daughter who drafted Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, CMC, and Jordan Love?
Ice cream or flavored ice, one or the other. That's what I would do. That is a lot of people, not just your daughter. Power of positivity. Jordan Love comes back. The Green Bay offense should be fine. Losing Puka and Cooper Kupp is very tough, but everyone is in that boat. The injuries are killing everyone across the board. Luckily, Joe Mixon came back on Sunday Night Football, but it's hurt everyone here. So stay in it. Try to make some good waiver claims. Jackson Smith and Jigba still on people's waiver wires because of what happened in week 1. Maybe you can pick some people up and hope that they come back. But I've been there. Frustrating for your daughter. Glad to see her playing fantasy, though.
All right, Mike. Anything we didn't cover that you think we should before I let you go for the week?
No, sorry about the internet. I had the guy come and update it, but I guess there's something going on outside. But yeah, we're ready to roll here at FTN. The data, the models, everything's good. We're off to a great start. Kind of like to see what the Dolphins are going to do on Sunday. I think for your sake and for FTN's sake, I'd love a 3-point win for Seattle. That'd be fantastic. But looking forward to a great week. And our NBA college basketball stuff is coming also, and hockey as well. So looking forward to a big week here. Let's get the Seahawks to 3-0, Brian. What do you say?
I think we would all like to see that heading into a Monday Night Football matchup with the Lions. Could be very fascinating, and a Seahawks team that's done well in Detroit the last couple of years. But a Lions team, for my money, Mike, I know all the records. I know where things are. The Lions are, to me, the best team in the NFC until I see otherwise. I know everyone else, most people have the 49ers with that title. I just really think the Lions have more answers across more parts of their team than the 49ers do, and we'll just have to see how that plays out over the course of the season. All right, everybody, make sure you follow Mike at Randle Rant. his Twitter is without any internet problems. It's up there. It's great. It's fantastic. And you can get all his takes there. Make sure you follow him and make sure you check out all the stuff at ftnfantasy.com. Use promo code Hawks, get 15% off. Mike, it was great to see you.
Yes, sir. Be back next week. Thanks. Good luck.
All right, take care. All right. That was Mike Randle, man. Always great to have Mike on. I think, like I said, this week is the week. It's kind of, I mentioned this yesterday. It's kind of the sorting hat stuff going on. By the end of this week, we will have a pretty good idea about who's who in the NFL. And as of right now, there are only 4 undefeated teams in the NFC. And I tweeted about this last night. It's not the teams that anyone would have picked. It's the Seahawks. It's the Bucks. It's the Saints. And who's the 4th team? I should know this. I tweeted about it. It is the Bucks, the Saints, the Seahawks, and the Vikings. It's the Vikings. So I think that we're going to find out this week how many of those teams are real. I think the Saints, it's not very common for teams to start with 2 blowout wins and not be real. Like, point differential is meaningful for a reason. And I would go in with the assumption at this point that the Saints are for real. And I actually did my power rankings. I put this up on hawkblogger.com just this morning before the show. And I will share those with you all so you can see what I'm seeing. Saints are predictably still at the top of those rankings. So you've got them at a very, like, they're clearing everybody at this point. When you blow out 2 teams, that's what happens. This does include a strength of schedule component, unlike a lot of other power rankings right now. I'm seeing a funny note here from Ricardo. Saints are real. I feel dumb for denouncing the Hawk Blogger power rankings. I appreciate you, man. I mean, I will always say week 1 power rankings statistically driven, these are all statistically driven because I don't trust anyone who just does personally ranked subjective rankings. It's too much opinion and bias that leaks in. But week 1, you've got such a small sample size. So I've seen teams bounce all around, but the Saints were number 1 last week. They did drop a little bit in terms of their total team strength, but they're still number 1 by a mile. The Bills had one of the largest gains this week. They played a very good game, especially defensively against the Dolphins. All the turnovers really helped the passer rating that they allow. And then you've got the Vikings and Tampa Bay. So you got 3 of the 4 top teams in these power rankings are in the NFC. The Seahawks are down there at 10. So the Seahawks dropped a couple of spots. Last week they were 8. They dropped to 10. Again, this is why I do this, because I'm a vibes guy and I'm a Seahawks fan. It's, I always want to vote them up. But to be totally honest, I think that this is a relatively reasonable place to put Seattle at this point. I think there's a lot of folks that still have the Seahawks in the 20s or the late teens. I don't think this team has proven enough to say that they're, higher than 10. I think this is roughly about right. And they've got to prove that they should be higher. And one of the things I wrote about on Twitter today as well is there's really good things on the defense in terms of, yards per play allowed. They're number 2 in the NFL. Pressure, like passer rating allowed, is very good. I think it's 4th or 5th in the NFL. And when you look at their pressure rate, they are one of the top pressure rate teams, one of the top QB knockdown teams, but they are tied for, I think, 3rd or 4th in the NFL in missed tackles. They've had 17 missed tackles in 2 games. And people are like, oh, that must have been mostly in week 2. No, it was pretty evenly split. People kind of ignored this in week 1 because the tackling felt so good because they were flying around, and when someone would miss a tackle, somebody else was there to clean it up. But there were a number of missed tackles in that game. And then week 2, you all saw them. They were a lot more obvious because there wasn't someone to clean them up, and they turned into some big plays. So the missed tackle rate is not good. And the sack rate is like I don't know. I should just look at what I posted on my own profile this morning. I want to say it was like 17th. Let's see. 19th in sack rate, 3rd in missed tackles. So, you know, they got some stuff to clean up. And this is a team that if you miss a tackle against Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Devin Achane, there's not cleaning up that's going to happen in that. Like, they're gone. So they really do need to tighten that up, and they need to come out with more energy on defense than they did. Offensively, they have not played a complete game, not only from a, 60-minute perspective, but from a which part of the offense, running or passing. And Kenneth Walker is important, but I do think that Mike McDonald placed the emphasis on the right place in his press conference and in his show with Brock and Salk, where he's like, we're not moving people. Like, offensive line's got to move people. And we'll see. Christian Haynes, he said, earned some more reps. Christian Haynes had the highest run block grade on the team for his game this week. And in fact, I might do this if you guys are up for it. I might try to see if I can pull up his snaps and we can watch them together. I don't know if you guys would be interested in that. I might do that. We'll see how it goes. I'm making stuff up as I go along, so it might not even work, but I've been wanting to do that. And if you want to stick around, we can do that together. But the other pieces on these power rankings that I thought were worth calling out, I mean, the Niners are down here at 16, Detroit's at 17. The Niners are allowing, I think I wrote about it here. They have a negative passer rating differential. They're allowing 101.4 passer rating. And what did I talk about to start, in the offseason, start the year? Their rush defense is a question mark. They're 21st in opponent rush EPA. If I look over at, let me look at run rankings, or actually, let me look at just where rankings are in general. They are currently 14th in defensive DVOA. They are 20th in rush ranking for DVOA. So 49ers have some, I think a lot of people are glossing over. I think the 49ers have some issues that don't make them a bad team, but make them a more vulnerable team than they've been for years. I also found some videos of Trent Williams blocking. In fact, let me see if I can put those up here and show you guys what I saw yesterday when I was doing this. Here we go. Here's the first one. So if you look at Trent Williams on this play, so he's on the left side, watch him get driven back, and then ultimately his man gives up the sack. So that's one. And then let me show you this other one. Oops. I'll show you this other one. This was not quite as bad, but watch this here. So this is an interesting one. Watch Trent Williams on the left, and look how he just loses his man. I mean, they were doing a stunt, but basically was not able to be effective in blocking anybody on this play. And look how he was. Interesting scheme here from the Vikings. Look at the rusher here. He's currently opposite of 65. Watch him chip. It's like the opposite of a chip. It's a defensive chip, pushing Trent Williams there, which then clears the way for the game to be played there. So I think there's some legitimate reasons to be concerned about what we've seen from the 49ers, if you're a 49ers fan, which none of us are. And the Lions, I was surprised they lost to the Bucs at home. That's a big loss, and I think one that could hurt them down the road. All right, let me pull up. I'm going to try this. Let's folks want to stick around. I'm going to try to pull up the Christian Haynes film. We can watch this together, and I have not done this so far, so I can't tell you what it's going to look like, but I am interested. I've wanted to do this, so we might as well just do it together. And let's, for whatever reason, it's not letting me do the specify when I want it to be on offense. So it's going to show us some field goal stuff. But let me share. Okay. Let me share my screen here. Oops. All right. Here we go. I'm going to share this. We're going to share my entire screen so I can highlight some things for you. All right. So here we go. You guys, oops, let's get this removed and let's get this added. All right. There we go. All right. So here is Christian Haynes, 64. All right. Let's see what happens on this play. Whoops. Here we go. So decent job there. Nothing. He stays connected to his guy. Nothing of note, really. Next play. Here is Christian Haynes. 5-man line. Interesting to see Laviska Shenault here in the backfield. What do we get here? This is a pass block rep. Nothing of note here. Quick out to Laviska. All right. Next rep. Christian Haynes right here. Sharpening the backfield. You see JSN in motion. And this is a pass play. I thought did fine there. Nothing specifically good or bad. Pretty quick pass to get that off. Haynes still here at right guard. Now that one, so let's watch that again. Let's watch that one again. So this is Christian Haynes had a very low pass block grade from PFF. This is probably part of the reason. Watch on this play. Unfortunately, it doesn't give me really fine motor controls here. Let me see if I can slow it down. Let's go half speed. All right. Watch here. He loses the edge on that player. Gives up a hit on his quarterback. Nearly results in an interception. Now, this is an interesting play, actually, because DK was open. It doesn't look like it here, but DK was open. Like, I saw this happen, and it was going to be a touchdown. Like, so in that case, Christian Haynes, gives up a pressure and a hit, and almost cost his team a turnover. So that is part of where you're going to get some of the concerns on Christian. That was a very fortunate that did not result in an interception. All right, got Haynes here. Next play. Good connect. Like, that's a nice rep. Let's watch that again. Watch Christian here. Now, remember we've talked about with Ray, he talks about you're trying to get your shoulder to the other side of this guy. And he also talks about whether your door is opening or whether you're closing. So Christian Haynes here is trying to get his left shoulder pushed forward to get this guy to create a hole here, right? So he is trying to reach around and really control this guy. And he does, right? So you end up here with Christian Haynes with the right, like with his left shoulder forward. He's opened the door. He's done his job in this case. Interesting to see that the person who didn't do their job is Laken Tomlinson, right? So he does not get this player. When he makes mistakes, it seems almost always, at least so far, small sample, like he loses guys inside. So I don't know if it's a technique thing, but I don't know why he's not targeting the inside here. That keeps this play from being, a little bit more successful. Connor Williams also doesn't quite hold his guy, but that's a good rep there from Christian Haynes. An indication of why he was probably positively graded on some of these run plays. Another pass protection play, nothing to speak of there. Nice quick pass to Zach Charbonnet on that one. You've got more guy. You got Gino pushing for a first down here. All right, so then here we go again. Christian over here on the right side. I think that's a pretty good rep. So let's watch that in slow motion a little bit, go down to half speed. Oh, it doesn't want to give me half speed options. All right, fine. But if you watch this with Christian, he's going to get, someone trying to bull rush him there. Connor misses this guy entirely, but he's like, he knows he's looking this direction. Let's see how he recovers. That's a pretty good recovery from Connor Williams, and Christian Haynes is not getting pushed back. Also, like, good to focus on Laken Tomlinson there, doing a nice job. Did not give up any ground. A little bit of a loss here from Stone Forsythe around the edge. But Gino has time to deliver the pass, and there's a first down. All right. Next play here, you got Barner on the right side. Another good run block there from Christian. And again, look at how he handles this defensive player by immediately he is closing the door. Like, he is getting his left shoulder forward and creating this gap, and absolutely seals off his man, right? Like, he has done his job. I mean, Charles Cross has done his job. It looks like Connor Williams didn't quite get as much depth here as you would have wanted. But Christian's absolutely has turned his man around. He's never had a chance at that play. So I think this is good, and this is going to probably be something that gets the attention of the Seahawks as they're trying to get the run game going. How is this going to look for this week? All right, here's another play. This is an RPO. Good chance to kind of see what an RPO looks like in real time. So key part with an RPO, and I think this might be the play where Laken gets too far, but an RPO has the offensive lineman blocking for a run, and then the quarterback has to get rid of the ball fast enough that the offensive linemen don't get more than a yard down the field, or else it's a legal man downfield. So it could be a run, it could be a pass. It's up to Gino in this case. What happens is, what you're going to see is all of these offensive linemen are blocking for run. Okay. But if you look at Laken Tomlinson, he's like off to the races. and so when Gino decides to make this a pass, Laken Tomlinson is like 5 yards downfield. This actually had people in the press box cackling about how far downfield he was. So this play did result in a penalty. It didn't even help that they did it, but not anything for Christian one way or another on that particular play. All right, after the penalty, move back a little bit. Let's watch this rep from Christian. Sorry about that. Just had to rewind because I wanted to see something there. So, see, that's not a good rep. That's not a good rep. Let's watch that again. So what you have here from Christian Haynes is his eyes are here, and he's looking right at this guy. But this player here is going to race inside, and Christian Haynes is not prepared for that. So This is a common thing that happens with young linemen. The games and stunts, twists get them on more often than others. And so what you see here is Haynes is absolutely locked in on this guy who's already being blocked effectively by Stone, and he is not doing his job. He's left this big rush lane open, and watch this guy just fly past it. He's like, oh no, this is the oh no moment for Christian Haynes. So this is part of the pass protection that wasn't great. He gives up another quarterback hit. So 2 quarterback hits. Lucky for him, it resulted in a pass interference in the end zone. And so they then get it at the 1 yard line. Let's watch Christian on this play. How does he do? Nothing good or bad, pretty much a stalemate, but it's a touchdown. You know, you're going from the 1 yard line. So I think we'll stop there on the Christian Haynes tape for today. But, you know, it was interesting. It was fun to watch that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that as well. We'll do that now and again together and kind of see what we see. But I thought there were some encouraging moments and there were some not so encouraging moments. And when you're talking about giving up 2 quarterback hits in one series, that's a lot. That's a lot. So let's keep it real about Christian Haynes. I know everyone's excited. He's your 3rd round pick. You want to see him get out there, but they've also got to make sure he's ready to be out there. And there are some question marks. You can't afford to have that kind of pass blocking when your quarterback's as important as he is for any team. All right. I think that's it, folks. I think we've covered it for today. I am going to spend the bulk of my day working on my tail of the tape, doing my breakdown between the matchup of these 2 teams. We'll try to get you insights beyond the simplistic of, you know, just looking at the numbers or just looking at Tua being out. I think I'll try to get all that for you and get that posted tomorrow morning. We'll have Hawk Blogger Mornings tomorrow. There's no press conferences today, so tomorrow I'll be back at the VMAC doing press conferences. We'll do that report. I'm also excited that tomorrow night Real Hawk Talk will be back 6 o'clock Pacific time, and it will be Jeff, Nathan, and Michael Sean Dugar will join us for the first part of the show. So excited to have Mike back on. He can make fun of me for not belonging in the press room or whatever. I've given him free reign to say whatever he wants. But looking forward to having Mike on. So that'll be fun. Wednesday night, 6 o'clock Pacific time. If you have not given the show a like, a click subscribe, please do. If you have not renewed your membership for the channel, please do. We had all these amazing gifted memberships. Those gifted memberships are only for a month. So, you know, one way to pay it forward is to gift memberships to other people. Another way to pay it forward is to make sure you stay a member, you know, keep it going, and would appreciate that. I do think I missed a super chat, so let me go back and grab that before we depart. I think this came from Detail Oriented. It says, Brian, my take and why I'm so positive on the Hawks. I think we've seen our floor, stuff that needs to be improved on, yet we still won. I don't think we've even come close to our ceiling yet. 12-5, go Hawks. Look, I think 12-5 is so much more realistic than it was a week ago. And that's not just because the Seahawks won their game. It's because of the Rams. The Rams may be in the contention for a top 5 pick this year. They may just really be bad. Cooper Kupp's out for a long time. They lost their starting safety, Johnson. He's going to probably go on IR. They're already struggling mightily on defense. So that's 2 games that I think most people had as either split or maybe even for some folks might have had them losing both games. I think those are going to be 2 games that the Seahawks are likely going to be favored to win, maybe heavily favored to win. One of them is the last game of the season in LA. Are the Rams even going to be playing anybody in that game? I think it's certainly not going to be for the playoffs. So the fact that the Seahawks get the Rams late in the season could be advantageous because they might not be playing for anything at that point. I think that should increase the Seahawks' likely win total at least by 1, maybe by 2, depending on your perspective. I don't know that we've seen their floor yet. And I'm not saying that because I'm pessimistic. If you've watched the show, you know that I'm not. I think we've really got to see a little bit more of the season to understand who the opponents were that they just faced. I agree with you, Bobby, that the team is going to likely improve their quality of play, but they also may be facing a higher quality of play from their opponent. So I don't think we can say for sure we've seen their floor. I will tell you one of the things that I remain optimistic about that other people are not. Abe Lucas. I think Abe Lucas is going to come back and be a difference maker for this team that's only a couple weeks away. He posted on his Instagram story yesterday a video of him running around on, doing some reps, showing progress. I just think this guy's going to come back and be a big assist for this team, and nobody's really counting on that. So I want to see this team stop the run the way it did week 1. Week 2 was not acceptable. I mean, it's just not acceptable. And it's not something that if you are a vulnerable team against the run, it doesn't change. And I'll be honest, I know Ad Dirty has been excited and recruited Jonathan Hankins to come here. I don't know that I've seen it yet from Jonathan Hankins in terms of being someone who controls the middle of that line. I don't know if I've seen Jaron Reed really control the middle of that line. I want to see better line play against the run. I think there's been some issues there. So I think the personnel has to show that they're capable of it, and they haven't necessarily faced some of the best opponents they're going to face in that regard. If they can't defend the run against the Niners, good luck. If you can't defend the run against the Rams, that's going to be a closer game than it needs to be. Against the Packers, who have been doing some good things even without Jordan Love. So there's some questions, let's be honest. But I love the optimism, and I appreciate the super chat. So really appreciate everyone who tuned in. But please give the show a like, click subscribe, head on over to Hawk Blogger on Instagram, click follow, and tune right in, because I will be back tomorrow morning with another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. We'll fill you in on who that will, if it will just be me or if I'll have a guest. We'll figure that all out real soon. And until then, I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawk Blogger. This has been episode 177 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.